Tonight on The Wrap, Sir Jim Ratcliffe apologises after telling Sky News immigrants have colonised the UK. The British billionaire says he regrets his choice of language if it offended some people. Downing Street says he was right to say sorry, but Nigel Farage tells us Sir Jim was correct and should not apologise.
The use of the word colonisation, that's what he's withdrawn.
Do you think that's offensive?
I think it's probably, in the dictionary definition, correct, but perhaps people aren't quite ready for it.
The Downing Street departures continue. The UK's top civil servant, Cabinet Secretary Sir Chris Warmald, is out. But will the Prime Minister's clear out in the wake of the most perilous spell in his premiership help or hinder him? Also tonight. Families' anger as prolific paedophile Vincent Chan is jailed for 18 years for abusing young children. The government says it's now considering introducing mandatory CCTV in nurseries and primary schools. But would it deter predators? Plus, Zelensky hits out as a Ukrainian athlete is banned from the Winter Olympics over images on his helmet honouring athletes killed since Russia's invasion of his country. Should politics and sport mix? We discuss the day's biggest stories with Christina, Patterson and Rod Liddle, and John Craig is in with us. Plus a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including coverage of the fallout from Sir Jim Ratcliffe's Sky News interview. Good evening, Christina and Rod. Welcome to you and to you, John, of course. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's interview with Sky News, in which he claimed that the UK has been colonised by immigrants, has dominated the political debate for the last 24 hours. The Prime Minister immediately demanded an apology, and today he got one of sorts. Sir Jim said he was sorry that his choice of language had offended some people, but insisted it was important to raise the issue of controlled immigration to support economic growth. So, should he have apologised? Christina, come to you first.
Well, he didn't apologise. He said he was sorry if people had been offended, which is not an apology. So I'd be delighted to talk about if he had apologised, but he very clearly and deliberately didn't.
Rod, did he apologise, and should he have?
He did a non-apology apology. They're very famous. Tony Blair invented them, I think. And should he apologise? No, never apologise. It just makes it worse. And particularly never apologise if Sir Keir Starmer tells you to.
Thank you both. We'll hear more from you both in a moment. Well, the political pressure had been bearing down on Sir Jim all day, with cabinet ministers variously describing his comments as disgusting and disgraceful. Take a look at this from John, our chief political correspondent. We'll talk to you in a moment when we've seen your work today.
You've become very unpopular for a while.
Billionaire tycoon and Manchester United chief Sir Jim Ratcliffe was in Antwerp to talk about the seemingly uncontentious subject of the chemical industry. But it was his incendiary comments on immigration in a Sky News interview that sparked an explosive reaction from politicians, including Sir Keir Starmer.
You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause...
It's been colonised?
It'll cause... Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it?
To senior Labour figures, Sir Jim's comments sounded like the language of Reform UK. And Reform UK's leader, Nigel Farage, who Sir Jim said he'd met recently, told Sky News he rejects the criticism, though the word colonisation was not ideal.
Was Jim Ratcliffe right to apologise for his comments?
No, he apologised for the use of one word.
Colonisation.
Yeah, he didn't apologise for his comments. So what did he say? He said 12 million people have come to the country in the last few years. Fact. Now, the use of the word colonisation, that's what he's withdrawn.
Do you think that's offensive?
I think it's probably, in the dictionary definition, correct, but perhaps people aren't quite ready for it.
I mean, it has historical overtones, doesn't it?
It does.
In his apology, Sir Jim, who founded the Ineos Chemicals Group, said, "I'm sorry that my choice of language has offended some people in the UK and Europe and caused concern. But it's important to raise the issue of controlled and well-managed immigration that supports economic growth. The Manchester United co-owner is one of Britain's richest men, with a net worth of £17 billion. In 2020, he moved his primary residence to the tax haven of Monaco. Sir Keir Starmer's spokesman said it was right that Sir Jim had apologised for his offensive and wrong comments. Other cabinet ministers joined in the backlash.
What Jim Ratcliffe said was unacceptable. It was disgusting, frankly.
The Prime Minister's right. A lot of people would have found that language offensive, wrong.
The Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, said Sir Jim's comments were inaccurate, insulting and inflammatory. There was also condemnation from the world of football. The Football Association said it was looking into the comments. Sir Jim's own club, Manchester United, said it prides itself on being inclusive and welcoming, with a diverse group of players and staff and a global community of supporters. And on the streets of Manchester...
I'm an immigrant myself. I've been here for over 20 years, and I think everyone has a part in the community.
I think he should live in the UK and pay his taxes. End of. Otherwise, he should have his knighthood stripped off him.
Manchester is built on immigrants, right? From the Irish to, we've had everyone. So it seems a really weird thing to say.
Sir Jim remains defiant, but critics claim his outburst was an own goal.
Well, John, it looks like Sir Keir Starmer got what he wanted. He asked for an apology and got one of sorts.
Yes, sort of, because he started off by saying, sorry if I've caused offence, but then he went on to justify by saying it's important to have the debate about these issues. And he was a great Brexiteer back in 2016. And one of the things that he has complained about is the fact that, as he puts it, Brexit didn't turn out how people anticipated because the politicians hadn't implemented it properly. As for the figures that he quoted, they have been hotly disputed today, and he really did face a really enormous backlash. Nearly all from Labour politicians, Lib Dems as well, not so much from the Conservatives. And you saw in our Sky News interview with Nigel Farage there, tricky one for him. He was trying not to cause offence.
Christina, you said at the beginning that it wasn't an apology.
Of course it wasn't an apology. Of course it wasn't an apology. If anyone is offended, is the absolute standard non-apology. And he does, he's clearly not going to apologise. He's in no mood to apologise. And I think he is out of touch with the country. Sure, there will be some potential reform voters who will think, oh, yeah, he's speaking for all of us. It's fine to talk about immigration and to talk about the net benefits or disadvantages of migration. And let's not forget that it was Boris Johnson who increased post-Brexit, increased our immigration to record levels, 944,000 in the year leading up to 2023. And I think one of the reasons that people like Jim Ratcliffe were voting for Brexit was in order ostensibly to reduce migration. But I think to use the word colonise, there is no way that is not offensive to most people in this country. It's a very deliberate and offensive use of words, and he has very clearly not backed down from it.
You disagree, Rod? You think he has nothing to apologise for?
I don't think it was deliberate to use colonise. You're all getting very het up over this. It's the first time ever that anyone has taken anything Sir Jim Ratcliffe said seriously, either on football or on politics. I don't quite understand why it's the #1 story throughout the land. And it isn't, actually. It's the #1 story in certain parts of the land. Nigel Farage is wrong. By a dictionary definition, immigrants have not colonised this country. Let's be clear. That means to move into a country and take over its political apparatus. That hasn't happened. But where he's got a point is that we have had an awful lot of immigration, something in the region of 250,000 people legally per year, and then another 30,000, 40,000, or however many, 50,000 this year, coming illegally. And that has an impact upon the country, both in terms of its infrastructure and an impact in terms of its culture. There is a problem there, and a lot of people feel that it is a problem. And it's not just Reform voters, believe me. It's a lot of Labour voters as well. Up where I live, in the north of England, it's a lot of Labour voters think that as well.
But you would agree that his language was extreme?
I don't think it was extreme. I thought it was. What's the best word for it? I think it was inelegant and just wrong. He got it wrong. He used the wrong word. And so I suppose you could say, well, I withdraw the word colonise, which he kind of did do. Otherwise, he's just talking about, well, we've had too much immigration for the last 30 years. And the important point, and the one which you raised, I think, earlier, is that it was indeed Boris Johnson who, of course, increased the number because of that very short-termist view we have in this country on politics. It is one of the greatest problems our country has. Everything is so short-term, and one of the short-term, you get a boost to the economy, you get a short-term boost to the Treasury if you bring in immigrants, and then you wait for the next government to pay for it. You know, that's the problem.
The reason it sounds like the language of reform is because Suella Braverman, when she was Home Secretary, just joined Reform in the last few weeks, talked about an invasion, similar sort of claim.
Yeah.
The thing that pushes the story forward is the response of the FA, who are investigating whether he's brought the game into disrepute, because he's actually aligned his political affiliations with his role.
If he had said, sorry, but this is the thing, you know, if he had said, I think we should have more immigrants in the country, we don't have anywhere nearly enough at the moment, and I agree with the Labour Party, would he have then been investigated? I mean, we've got to be even-handed about this. He is expressing a problem with immigration, and he should be allowed to do that without being pilloried across the country. He should also, incidentally, pay his taxes in this country, as the chap on your film said. You know, but...
Yes, because he's an economic migrant.
Yeah, he's an economic migrant himself, exactly.
He is an economic migrant.
Monaco for the weather.
And, you know, and also football wouldn't survive 5 minutes without a hefty influx of immigrants, because, you know, it's not exactly, you know, white Brits are not known for winning,
yes,
you know,
but
World
that's
Cups.
not quite the same. I mean,
might have a disagreement on
Three
on
English
that.
players in the Manchester United team that played West Ham the other night.
Yeah, they weren't very good either. But they did beat West Ham, which
it was a draw.
Oh, yeah, it was, wasn't it? Last minute. Yeah.
1 year to mention 1966. That's all I'm saying. Well, that apology from Sir Jim Ratcliffe after his comments to Sky News is on the front of the Metro, describing the incident as Big Jim's own goal. We'll bring you that and all the front pages at past. Now, there's been another Downing Street departure. This time, it's the UK's most senior civil servant, the Cabinet Secretary, Sir Chris Wormald. He's been widely rumoured to be on his way out as the Prime Minister attempts to reset his premiership in the wake of controversies over the appointments of Lord Mandelson and Matthew Doyle, despite their links to sex offenders. John, why has he gone, really? What's the reason?
Because the Prime Minister seems to blame those around him and those who work for him, rather than realise that perhaps I'm the problem here. I mean, that's what his critics claim anyway. But clearly, he's only been in the job just over a year. And I think we're now going to get the third Cabinet Secretary on top of the fifth Director of Communications, the second or third Chief of Staff. I remember a week or so ago we had the great Anthony Selden on Sky News saying that the problem with the Prime Minister, he's not good at appointing people, and when he's appointed them, he doesn't treat them very well. Now, let me just tell you what's happened exactly. I mean, this was one of the worst kept secrets in Whitehall in Westminster, because on Tuesday of this week, when the Intelligence and Security Committee were having a meeting talking about how to deal with the Epstein files and all that, they said after the meeting the Cabinet Secretary had been due to attend but was unavailable at the last minute. Well, it was clear then that he was on the way out. Anyway, he's gone. A payoff around about £250,000. And noticeable in his statement, no thanks to the Prime Minister, very terse statement. He's gone straight away, out the door. And instead of appointing the person we all expected, that's Dame Antonia Romeo, who's the Permanent Secretary of the Home Office, she's going to be one of three doing the job on an interim basis. The others are Catherine Liddle, Permanent Secretary of the Cabinet Office, and the third one is James Bowler, Permanent Secretary at the Treasury. So the Prime Minister's indecision is final.
Christina, shortest-serving Cabinet Secretary in history, I believe, John. Is that correct?
Ooh. Could be. What about Simon Case, though? He was poorly, though. He wasn't
fired for that reason. I mean, it's a total mess. I'm exhausted already, and it's only Thursday night by the shenanigans going on in the government this week. I think the weird thing about Keir Starmer is he's very bad at making all kinds of decisions, but he's quite good at being ruthless when he wants to. And I think maybe that's his key quality in some ways, because I think sheer ruthlessness has enabled him to hang on by his fingernails this week. I think that could last for a while. I don't think anything will happen before May. I mean, you know, he could hemorrhage the entire operation at Downing Street, and I think he'd still be clinging on. But I think largely because there isn't a good plan B at the moment. And I think Wes Streeting kind of blew himself up a bit the other day. I think he handled it all in a very cat-handed way. And Angela Rayner is clearly on manoeuvres as well and has been speaking out about Labour's policy on pubs. And, you know, I think she's right about that. I think it's unaffordable for pubs and hairdressers and shops and all kinds of places at the moment in the light of the Labour policy. But there is no good plan B. And we've seen the movements in the pound and the bond market as well. So, you know, I think that alone gives Keir Starmer some breathing space.
Rod, do you think Christina's right that the Prime Minister's quite good at being ruthless? Kemi Badenoch saying that he threw Chris Warmond under a bus.
He throws the powerless under a bus. He doesn't throw those who are a threat to him under a bus. He has no spine when it comes to taking decisions. That's a big problem. You know, we could be in a much better position now if he had gone with his instincts and Rachel Reeves's instincts in the last budget and cut welfare. But he had no answer to his backbench MPs. He took no action over Rachel Reeves's disastrous budget of October 2024. So those people who can't fight back, he will have a go at. Now, I don't know how Sir Chris Wormold has offended Keir Starmer's sensibilities. I don't know what the machinations are there. But there is a kind of deeper issue here. You know, and if civil servants are listening, don't forget these were the civil servants who were complaining about bullying under the last few disastrous Conservative administrations. And presumably they're complaining again. I think there's a structural problem with our civil service in that it may not necessarily be doing the job it's meant to do, which is to facilitate the government to do what its policies.
On the civil servants line, just to say that Dave Penman, leader of the FDA, which is the union that represents civil servants, his quote is a new law for this government and its relationship with a new low, sorry, for this government and its relationship with the civil service, and says that there was briefing against Sir Chris Warmond almost immediately.
Yeah, you saw that with the Tories. You remember Priti Patel got into trouble, and I think Suella Braverman as well got into trouble. I'm trying to remember. And there does seem to be a structural problem there with the civil service, whether it's a Labour administration or a Conservative administration.
OK, let us move on now, shall we? Now to the case of a paedophile nursery worker who abused dozens of young children, some aged just 3 and 4. Vincent Chan was jailed today for 18 years. In response, the government says it's considering making CCTV mandatory in nurseries and primary schools. More on that in a moment. First, let's get the details of the case from Sky's Tom Parmenter.
His face is right there, on the front of the folder that tells the story of their daughter's time at nursery.
He wrote a large chunk of what's inside this, and we wanted to share it because it demonstrates how much is tainted by what he's done, how we remember her time at nursery. He was responsible for every element of her care when she was there, settling her to sleep during nap time, her intimate care, going to the toilet, comforting her when she was upset. As a parent, knowing those moments of vulnerability were looked over by a predator, I feel the innocence of her childhood is stolen.
Chan had over 1 million images on his devices, many showing him abusing young children in a primary school and then the Bright Horizons nursery on Finchley Road in North London. Among them, this couple's daughter.
On his devices, they found a whole load of images of our daughter, which were described to us as being very disturbing in nature. As a result, they considered her to be extremely high risk of also having been sexually abused.
He'd worked at the nursery for 7 years. Before that, he was secretly filming young students and adult colleagues at a primary school.
I, Vincent Chan, 2810 AT, hereby confirm that I'm guilty of all the things complained of in the disclosure document.
How do you feel about the videos I've told you so far?
No comment.
Do you recall those videos?
No comment.
He was sentenced to 18 years.
Every right-thinking person hearing about your offences would feel revulsion and disbelief. Your conduct was utterly wicked, perverse and depraved. You became a sexual predator and someone who had clearly lost all sense of moral compass.
1,200 families in North London have been told their children might have been exposed to this serial offender.
Whilst we've been able to speak to a number of families and provide them with clarity of what happened, tragic and absolutely disgusting behaviour by Chan, I still walk away with the unknown and being unable to actually speak to all families and provide them the clarity that their child was not subject to harm during Vincent Chan's care. All of those families that have had children go through that nursery setting or go through the primary school will be asking themselves the question, was my child a victim?
Do you have any feelings towards what he has done?
Obviously, we're totally sickened by his actions, and it's a real sense of despair that she was exposed to that. For us making a decision that millions of parents make every day to leave their children in the care of these professional organisations who have on the surface checks and balances and regulations to comply with. But this individual was so easily able to manipulate that system.
I feel absolutely let down by the hiring process and the fact that an existing offender was hired with rooms full of pre-verbal children who are literally sitting ducks behind closed doors with a sexual predator. I consider Bright Horizons responsible alongside Vincent Chan.
What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see a prosecution brought by the local authority.
Bright Horizons said their thoughts are with the families involved. Keeping children safe is our most important responsibility, they said. Vincent Chan broke that trust. His actions were depraved and devious and go against the kindness and care our dedicated professionals provide to children each day. The nursery chain said it's improved safeguarding, whistleblowing procedures and staff training. Parents say this must lead to systemic change in nurseries across the country. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
Completely repulsive, this case, and so disturbing. The judge describing him as utterly wicked, perverse and depraved. And one quote from a parent saying our children were sitting ducks. The government now looking at the potential for deploying CCTV in settings where young children are. Good idea, Christina?
It's such a difficult one. I mean, as you say, every parent's nightmare, and it is incomprehensible that people could do this kind of thing, but they do. Clearly, whatever checks were passed were either not sufficient or there was nothing on his previous record to indicate that he would do this kind of thing. I have to say, I'm not keen on the idea of there being CCTV everywhere. I mean, society operates to some degree on trust, and I absolutely understand that you wouldn't want to entrust your 3 or 4-year-old to a potential paedophile or, pervert. But at the same time, are we going to stick CCTV absolutely everywhere? I think if you're a worker who's being surveyed every minute of the day, and maybe that will be all of us in a few years, that certainly happens a lot in China at the moment, I think that I find the idea of living like that pretty repellent. But if that's what it takes, then maybe we have to do that. But I would like people to consider some alternative options more thorough checks. I don't know, maybe there could be interviews with psychologists or something that means we don't automatically go down the route of surveillance.
But you don't rule it out as a
I wouldn't rule it. I wouldn't rule it out as a last resort. But I hate the idea that everybody in our society will soon be surveyed 24/7 in whatever they do. I think that's a real infringement on people's privacy and their liberty and on their professional skills as well.
Rod, if it could prevent a heinous crime such as this, do you think that CCTV is a good idea? Should it be employed?
Yeah, I don't. It's not every area of employment. It's one particular area of employment. I mean, you hope that this is a singularity, don't you? That's what we all hope, that this is one out of however many 100,000 people are working in the nursery sector. But you can't be sure about that. And, of course, it being the nursery sector, there is the suspicion that it will attract people who are prone to that sort of perversion. So I see no great problem with CCTV. The alternative being, as you suggested, greater checks and balances. So expensive. Who pays for it? And, it may be a good thing that it turns the attention on the childcare centre. terribly low paid, many of these people, especially in the big chain operations, terribly low paid, probably not checked anywhere like they're meant to be either. So a little bit more scrutiny of that sector wouldn't come amiss.
But then you end up with a situation like care homes. There's been horrific abuse in
Yeah.
care homes, both of people with disabilities and of elderly people with dementia and so on. Some of those cases have been like winter.
But we have caught people because of the CCTV.
Yeah, but then we end up, there's a danger that people in low paid areas of work end up being surveyed, and, you know, the white-collar people sitting behind their computers aren't, and that doesn't seem fair to me.
Although, if you are a parent, there's no price that's too expensive to pay for securing the...
No, but you're not paying it. It's the taxpayer that pays it.
Well, the tax...
Yeah.
I mean, if it is the taxpayer, it's the taxpayer, but there's also the cost of childcare. You know, if it's put onto the cost of childcare, there will be many, many parents who say, I can't afford this.
OK.
You know.
Thank you both. Let's move on. Last night, we brought you the story of the Ukrainian skeleton race at risk of being banned from competing in the Winter Olympics. Well, today, Vladislav Hereskevich was indeed prevented from competing for wearing a helmet depicting Ukrainian athletes killed since Russia's invasion of his country.
To be honest, some athletes was talking to me about my helmet, and from my perspective, from my discussions, I didn't saw that athletes from skeleton sport who was participating with me in the venues was against this helmet in any way. So it wasn't, they wasn't feeling that this helmet overshadowing them. They think it's beautiful tribute, and it should be allowed. But I don't think it was the right decision in the first place to address and to not allow us to use this helmet. And during last days, I think I just proved this point for myself.
Christina, should he have been allowed to compete? Can politics and sport mix?
This is a really tough one, because my heart says, why wouldn't you want to commemorate friends of yours who died in a war? But I understand that there are rules about these things, and I remember there'd been, after Russia invaded Ukraine, there were Russians taking part who had the Z symbol on their clothing, and that was deemed rightly offensive. So I think probably on balance, he probably shouldn't have worn the helmet. But my heart wanted to cheer him when he wore that helmet, because it is an abomination what's happening in Ukraine, and Trump is supporting Putin, and the world is not getting behind Ukraine. So personally, I did want to cheer, but I can see that it put the Olympic Committee in a very difficult position.
Rod?
I think absolutely right decision. Sport has got itself into a terrible, terrible mess over politics. I mean, I agree with you. I'm incredibly pro-Ukraine. I think we should be doing more. Europe and America should be doing more, and we're not. But when sport begins to get involved with politics, you get all sorts of horrible hypocrisies crop up. I actually don't think that Russians should be banned from playing. You know, I don't associate a Russian inside forward with Vladimir Putin. He's an individual who plays. I don't associate, you know, an Israeli footballer with Benjamin Netanyahu. And so I think there should be absolutely no bars on who competes in football, who competes in other things, the Olympics. And I think we've got to keep politics well out of it, because the next person down that ski lift might have had a helmet saying globalise the intifada. You know, and then where would we have been?
Well, it was a difficult decision, because even the IOC president, Kirsty Coventry, was tearful having to pass the judgment. So it's a difficult one.
But it is difficult. But we have to be pretty clear about it, and you have to separate the two very, very distinctly, because we've had all sorts of problems with that, particularly in football over the last 20 years.
Rod and Christina, for the moment, thank you very much. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Well, we start with The Star. Their headline is Ban United, with the newspaper reporting that Sir Jim Ratcliffe could still face an FA ban, despite now apologising for his comments on migration in that interview with Sky News. Big Jim's own goal is the Metro's take, with Manchester United fans said to be insulted, appalled and outraged with Sir Jim's remarks. Elsewhere, the dismissal of Sir Chris Warmold from his role as the UK's most senior civil servant is on the front of The Guardian. The Eye claims Sir Keir Starmer is trying to relaunch his leadership with Dame Antonia Romeo, who is pictured tipped to step in as Cabinet Secretary. The Telegraph says Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham have called for more tax support for pubs in a fresh challenge to the Prime Minister's authority. Meanwhile, the government is losing its war on illegal drugs, reports The Express, with Labour accused of not having the backbone to stand up to crime gangs. The Mail goes with the government's long-awaited trans guidance for schools. A one-word headline on the front of the Mirror, unmasked, as a judge rules that the killer of 12-year-old Leo Ross can be named. And the Financial Times reports on the £9.9 billion takeover of British asset manager Schroders by American rival Nuveen. So let's kick off, shall we? Oh, that was an unintended pun. I'm extremely sorry. It's a phrase I often use. Has nothing to do with the story. But we're going to start with The Star and Sir Jim Ratcliffe. The headline there, Ban United. What is the detail behind this headline?
Yeah, well, it's a game of two halves.
You're going to keep this up, aren't you?
I think, I mean, it's a kind of game of two halves because whatever annoyance may have been caused by his statements in the first place, when a bloke asked him what he thought about immigration, what was he supposed to say? Was he supposed to not say what he thought? You know, that's the first...
I don't think he was asked about immigration. I think he volunteered it.
No, he was asked a political question. You know, it was about the economics of the country.
Yes, but OK, so he...
You know, I mean, what's he supposed to do? Now, my argument would be that you cannot... If you ban him, if you up the ante on this, so that anybody who feels that they have a problem with the 250,000, 300,000 people who come in every year, that it may not be for the best of the country, feel unable to speak about that. That is a shocking indictment of the way we conduct our affairs. No matter what the clumsiness and inelegance and inaccuracy, in fact, of what the boss of a football club said.
But that's their way, potentially, of reprimanding him for what he said.
Yeah, but
they disagree. They disagree.
Well, do they disagree? Let's ask them. Let's ask them what they think. You know, it's much as I said to you earlier that if he had come out and said, I think we should have more immigrants in this country, you know, you shouldn't be penalised for having a point of view which, in the case of saying we need to reduce immigration, is shared by, at the last estimate, 65% of the population. Obviously, the words he used weren't the sort of words that I would have used, and not the words that anyone who's got any sense on the issue. But he hasn't got any sense on the issue. He's a 78-year-old bloke who lives in Monaco and doesn't pay any taxes in this country, and he's very annoying. And he runs a football club I can't abide. So I have nothing in it for Jim Ratcliffe, I'm afraid.
No skin in the game there.
But we've got to preserve freedom of speech. You know.
I don't think he is being banned for his views on immigration. I think many people would think that nobody voted for the mass migration that has happened in this country. I think it's perfectly fine to have views about that and discussions about that.
But how is he bringing the game and Manchester United into disrepute?
I think by using a word like colonise, which he could have said, you know what, I was a bit unwise when I used that word. He hasn't said that.
Did say
no,
that.
He absolutely didn't say that. He absolutely didn't say that. He said he was sorry if people were offended by the word.
He used the wrong language.
Well, not really.
He did. He said, I used the wrong language.
I don't think he said exactly I used the wrong language. I think he said he regretted using a word that offended people. He didn't say he used the wrong word.
Shall I read the exact quote?
Yeah.
I'm sorry that my choice of language has offended some people in the UK and Europe and caused concern, but it is important to raise the issue of controlled and well-managed immigration that supports economic growth.
Yes, so he didn't say he used the wrong language. He said he's sorry that the language he used offended people, which is absolutely not an apology, and I think that is the reason. I mean, I'm not in favour of banning people for their views. I'm also not particularly in favour of banning people for their language. But I think, given that the word colonised really does have very, very strong
he doesn't
echoes.
know what it means.
Well, he's been told what it means.
Nigel Farage didn't know what it was mean.
He's been on the front. Yeah, well, he kind of did know what he meant, but he wasn't quite sure. Even Farage, who is so on the front foot in these conversations.
Farage said it was accurate to have used the word colonised, which is
and he was wrong. And he was wrong. So
wrong.
I mean, I think it was really clumsy, and I think the proper thing to do would have been to say, you know what, I used the wrong word, but I still have the right to raise this issue, and many of my former countrymen, because I don't live in this country anymore, are perfectly entitled to feel worried about that. But
maybe he should have had you word the statement for him.
If he'd paid me a lot of money, I would have told him precisely the error of his ways.
Almost everyone in Monaco's an immigrant.
Well, fine, absolutely fine. But are they colonising Monaco? They probably are.
Well, that's a whole other show. Let's move to the Telegraph, and Rayner and Burnham are at odds with Sir Keir Starmer over pubs. She joins forces with Burnham as Left flexes its muscles in fresh challenge to the PM. Rod?
Yes. I mean, this is going to be a continual story for the next... until Sir Keir Starmer goes, which everyone says is next weekend, and then the weekend comes and we sit and we wait and we look, and it never happens. My guess is it might not happen for some time. I think an alliance between Rayner and Burnham... I voted for Andy Burnham to be leader of the Labour Party back in 2015, was it? I think he stood. I'm sure he's really proud about that. But there's no route through for him at the moment. I don't see there's a route for Angela Rayner either until all of the tax stuff is got out of the way, and it's not out of the way.
But also depending on how that... Because even when that is resolved, a lot of people will still think, yeah, but she tried to...
Yeah. Well, she did.
You can't, so you can't live that down, really. I mean, I think she's an incredibly impressive person. I really do. And she's a great communicator. I think both she and Wes Streeting are much, much better communicators than Starmer.
So is Shabana Mahmood.
And so is Shabana Mahmood. I think she's fantastic. Yeah. I really do. But whether...
Is that who your money's on?
Yeah. No, it's who, if I were allowed to decide the result of the next leadership election, I'd go for Shabana Mahmood.
I would have gone for Streeting, but after his shenanigans this week, I think I would go for Mahmood, actually. I think she's very decisive, she's very quick, she knows what she believes, she's got a much clearer set of beliefs and principles than Starmer has.
It's great we have a Blue Labour consensus on this show. This is dreadful.
You're agreeing. It's fantastic.
Wait, get me out of here.
To the Mail, Labour opens door to trans children in primary schools, also covered in the Telegraph. Children will be allowed to change gender
and the
school.
Times as well, lead in the Times. It's remarkable. I think it's slightly over-egged. I think there is a problem. Quite clearly, the guidance which Bridget Phillipson has taken so long to deliver to anybody, I mean, it has been an absolute outrage that this wasn't handed down to all of our institutions about 6 months ago, but she's stalled it for political reasons. But it does do many of the right things. It keeps single-sex changing rooms, single-sex toilets. It means single-sex sports as well, so boys won't be able to play in girls' teams and so on, and all that's right. There is the problem, and I know Maya Forstatter from Sex Matters has been talking about this. I think there is a problem that it gives too much leeway to teachers to allow kids to socially transition, as they say these days, by sort of saying, actually, my name is Loretta, when they're actually called Daniel. So I think there is a problem there.
Yeah. The Mail saying the instructions drawn up by Kemi Badenoch forbade primary schools from changing pupils' pronouns, but the government's guidance had scrapped the ban, instead saying those as young as 4 should be allowed full social transition to the opposite gender, albeit in rare circumstances.
Yeah, I don't approve of that, because I think this whole thing, I mean, we could talk about it all night, and I have talked about it a fair bit, and I've written about it a fair bit, and we haven't got time to go into all the detail now, but I do think that this is social contagion. I think it basically came out of America. Judith Butler, there's an academic who's very, very influential in the whole thing. She basically created this whole idea of identifying as a different agenda. You can't suddenly identify as Cleopatra, for example. You know, you can't say, you know what, I'm a leopard today. You can, for some completely baffling reason, decide you can identify as the opposite sex. And I'm afraid, I think that has caused terrible damage with children being mutilated, with young girls with autism being given double mastectomies they didn't need. I think there's a very high number of girls who would have otherwise become lesbian who've been pressurised down this path. I think it has done untold damage to children. The trouble is that many, many teachers are young and left-wing and have been indoctrinated in this, and they absolutely believe it. I think probably I don't think this is the right response, but I think it's the beginnings of a path. Post the Hilary Cass review, I think it's the beginnings of a path towards something like sanity, which with any luck will do less harm to children and will enable those children who do have anxiety, eating disorders, autism or whatever, who are being tempted to go down a path which has nothing to do with the problems they are facing, to get them to address their issues through mechanisms that will actually help them.
Exactly, I agree 100% with that. Only one more thing to say, which is that it seems, thank the Lord, to be in abeyance. If you look at the figures which are coming out of the States, particularly at the moment, the number of people who are identifying as transgender or presenting as transgender has reduced. I think it was something like a tenfold over the last 2 or 3 years. So before Trump got in, by the way. So I think you're absolutely right. Social contagion and a wish to be different, which all kids have. You know?
The government, though, saying that all concerned should proceed with caution. This isn't carte blanche for people to identify children.
It is about time, Gillian, that they wish. Told the NHS what to do. You know, it is about time that the NHS had this sort of guidance.
People with cervix, you know, so it was OK to be a man. You couldn't even call yourself a woman. It was completely crazy.
It was nonsensical.
OK. Shall we move on? You mentioned Donald Trump. He's in the news again, as he is on most days. Front page of The Guardian, the Trump administration has revoked the ruling that greenhouse gases endanger human health in a move described as a gift to billionaire polluters. Christina.
Oh, dear. I cannot wait for the day when we do not have to talk about Donald Trump in relation to almost every item in the news. He carries on wrecking the world, and thank you. I mean, it's just, I don't know the detail of this particular endangerment finding. The idea is that he has removed this findings, which says that a build-up of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere endangers public health. What we do know is that that climate change will cause mass migration, basically, if it's not addressed. And the people who need to address it, essentially, are America and China, because the rest of us, it's just fiddling while Rome burns. You know, you can empty your yoghurt pots and put them in the right box if you really want to, and you probably have to, and you get in trouble with your council. But really, the rest of it is fiddling. You know, it has to be done at that kind of level, and Trump, I don't even know if it's accurate to say he doesn't believe in climate change. He just doesn't care. He just doesn't care, and it gives him tiny
he's a
bit
climate
of a
change denier, isn't he?
Well, he kind of is, but I don't think he really believes it does or doesn't exist. I think it's just about another way to assert, catch the headlines and assert that he's not going to do what he's being told to do. And so, of course, MAGA have bought entirely into this idea. And it's an anti-science. That's another very, very worrying thing about the current administration. It's anti-vax, it's anti-science, and that when the world's leading former liberal democracy is anti-science, that really is blowing up the Enlightenment values that liberal democracy is based on.
Yeah, the problem being that the previous administration was on so many other issues also anti-science, such as, for example, transgender.
I agree.
I mean,
I agree, but I mean, it's a question of degree.
It is. I mean, I think Trump is seeing this as well. Trump's view all the way along, whether he believes in climate change or not, is that this is all a con got up by the Chinese. I mean, he's always said that. And it's not true. We know that climate change exists. We know that you know, as someone who bird watches, I see birds appearing in the garden that would never have been here 20 years ago. You know, it's happening. There is a discussion about the degree to which it affects us. I don't know the detail and wouldn't like to come down either way, but it's a retrograde step and it's a problem.
Staying with Trump.
Oh, dear.
The front page of the Telegraph, his $10 billion lawsuit against the BBC will go ahead next year.
This is,
many predicting that it wouldn't see the light of day in court, but it's
I
going ahead.
think this is very depressing. I mean, obviously, that panorama was a total, I nearly used a bad word there, but mess. That should not have happened. And, you know, awful, you know, it was a big mistake. But the idea that taxpayers' money will have to go to fight this, no doubt, incredibly expensive legal case. And, I mean, it could be existential for the BBC, and that would be a disaster, not least, I mean, in terms of facts, because people, I keep meeting people and youngsters who are getting all their news from social media, who literally don't know the difference between something in the mainstream media that's been read by a lawyer and is fact-checked, and stuff they're seeing on social media that could come from Mars. You know?
Yeah, but in fairness...
Rod, very quick.
In fairness... they're watching a panorama film instead, which
I know,
hacked together because it fits with the producer's
As
ideas.
I said, it was a terrible mistake, but it would be a very heavy price.
But they've made many of those mistakes.
Yes, and I think they have made far too many mistakes. But do I want the BBC to be destroyed because of that? I don't.
I think Starmer has said it won't be taxpayers' money, but
where else is it going to come from?
Sorry.
We're going to have to leave it there for the moment. We could go on for an awful long time, but time is running out. Coming up, a warning to the government over plans for a holiday tax. Stay with us for more.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories,
but with more lively debate,
more in-depth commentary,
and more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, what will you say next to Benjamin Netanyahu? In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent. I've interviewed some of America's most recognisable politicians. Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting.
Mr. Walker, you're anti-abortion, but 2 women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir?
Connor, what did you say to the president? What did you say?
We had a great meeting. He was a great man.
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents, based in Washington, D.C.
David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here.
Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism? I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
The anger too, and the division.
Where are you from? From Sky News, UK.
Yeah.
Back up.
Mr. Navarro,
I'm allowed to ask questions, aren't I?
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr. Musk. Has your ego and ignorance cost Ukrainian lives?
David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody?
Free wherever you get your news.
What words do you have for Harry Dunn's family today?
Have a nice day.
Do you fear a fourth indictment?
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can. You are watching The Wrap. Hospitality and leisure bosses are warning that the cost of a fortnight's holiday in England could rise by £100 or more if the government pushes ahead with plans for a holiday tax. Take a look at this from Sky's Molly Malone.
How would you feel about paying extra money for your staycation in England? Well, that's what could be about to happen if this new so-called tourist tax comes into play. But why and how will it work? So these were plans introduced in the budget last year to give local mayors in England the ability to introduce what the government would say is a small charge on overnight stays in hotels, Airbnbs or bed and breakfast to raise some cash. So say potentially £2 per person per night when you stay somewhere. So for a family of 4, they could then be asked to pay somewhere in the region of £100 extra for a fortnight's holiday in England. So there's been a backlash. Hundreds of big accommodation and leisure companies like Butlins, Hilton and the Travelodge have written to the Chancellor saying holidays are for relaxing and not taxing, asking them to scrap the plan, saying it could force people to shorten their trips, reduce their spending with pubs, restaurants or local attractions, and perhaps even force people to go overseas instead. It has, though, been welcomed by some mayors in London, Liverpool and Manchester too. They're all Labour mayors. And it's worth saying, English cities like Manchester, for example, have already got similar schemes in place. Tourists can be asked to pay £1 a night, and that did raise more than £2.5 million in its first year. Plus, bringing in this levy or tax would bring England in line with Scotland and Wales, which are already introducing their own tourist taxes. And obviously, if you travel abroad, well, you'll know big cities like Paris, Rome and Brussels already have their own version of these types of taxes too. So that's kind of where the government are coming from here. There is still a consultation going on, but many clearly are pretty unhappy about it.
Rod, holidays are for relaxing, not taxing.
Yes, I kind of agree. I mean, it's an example of our expressions of loathing towards people who go on holiday, which we've seen all abroad for so long now, you know, particularly the Spanish islands and Italy. It's a problem. It will affect, I think, probably Cornwall and Devon first. And it may be that it persuades people to go to other more beautiful parts of the country, such as the northeast coast, around Saltburn, Whitby, further up to the Northumberland coast, which are unspoilt beaches without huge numbers of people on them and fewer Rick Stein restaurants, admittedly.
Oh, we're going to get complaints, Rod. We're going to get complaints. Christina.
Well, I'm just so glad I'm not a politician and I don't have to go on holiday, on wet holidays in England, because I wouldn't dream of going on holiday in England. Not because it's not beautiful, it is, you know, England is rich in its culture and variety and landscape, but I just can't bear the weather on holiday. I want sunshine, and it's so expensive to go on holiday in this country too.
So not for you either. Christina and Rod, thank you so much. When we come back, Sir Jim Ratcliffe apologises for his colonisation comments, but insists he wants a debate on immigration. Stay with us.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Tonight on The Wrap, Sir Jim Ratcliffe apologises after telling Sky News immigrants have colonised the UK. The British billionaire says he regrets his choice of language if it offended some people. Downing Street says he was right to say sorry, but Nigel Farage tells us Sir Jim was correct and shouldn't apologise.
The use of the word colonisation, that's what he's withdrawn.
Do you think that's offensive?
I think it's probably, in the dictionary definition, correct, but perhaps people aren't quite ready for it.
The Downing Street departures continue. The UK's top civil servant, Cabinet Secretary Sir Chris Warmold, is out. Will the Prime Minister's clear out in the wake of the most perilous spell in his premiership help or hinder him? Also tonight. Plus, Zelensky hits out as a Ukrainian athlete is banned from the Winter Olympics over images on his helmet honouring athletes killed since Russia's invasion of his country. Should politics and sport mix? We discuss the day's biggest stories with Christina Patterson and Liddle. Plus, the first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including coverage of the fallout from Sir Jim Ratcliffe's Sky News interview. Good evening, Christina and Rod. Welcome to you both. Well, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's interview with Sky News, in which he claimed that the UK has been colonised by immigrants, has dominated the political debate for the last 24 hours. The Prime Minister immediately demanded an apology, and today he got one of sorts. Sir Jim said he was sorry that his choice of language had offended some people, but insisted it was important to raise the issue of controlled immigration to support economic growth. So, should he have apologised?
No. Never apologise. Never apologise. And particularly don't apologise if Sir Keir Starmer tells you to apologise. Look, this would have been better coming from someone who isn't a tax haven billionaire, frankly, and is therefore, of course, an economic migrant in another country. But I think the furore which it's engendered amongst the media probably isn't reflected in the streets.
OK.
Sorry, you want to move on?
Christina, let's get Christina's thoughts as well.
Well, I thought it was interesting watching that snippet of Nigel Farage, because it's one thing for an industrialist economic migrant to not understand what the word colonise means, but it's quite another thing for someone who wants to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom to not understand what the word colonise means. And he didn't. He said that he thought it was probably accurate, the way that Jim Ratcliffe used it, and it wasn't.
But people weren't ready for it.
And it wasn't.
Exactly
so I think that's, to me, that's the story. That's way more shocking than... I mean, I don't really care what Jim Ratcliffe says or doesn't say. I've barely heard of the guy.
Exactly.
But for Nigel Farage to say that it's correct to say that immigrants in this country have colonised the UK, that is truly shocking and should be on every front page.
OK. Well, the political pressure had been bearing down on Sir Jim all day, with Cabinet ministers variously describing his comments as disgusting and disgraceful. Take a look at this from our chief political correspondent, John Craig.
You've become very unpopular for a while.
Billionaire tycoon and Manchester United chief Sir Jim Ratcliffe was in Antwerp to talk about the seemingly uncontentious subject of the chemical industry. But it was his incendiary comments on immigration in a Sky News interview that sparked an explosive reaction from politicians, including Sir Keir Starmer.
You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause...
It's been colonised?
It'll cause... Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it?
To senior Labour figures, Sir Jim's comments sounded like the language of Reform UK. And Reform UK's leader, Nigel Farage, who Sir Jim said he'd met recently, told Sky News he rejects the criticism, though the word colonisation was not ideal.
Was Jim Ratcliffe right to apologise for his comments?
No, he apologised for the use of one word.
Colonisation.
Yeah, he didn't apologise for his comments. So what did he say? He said 12 million people have come to the country in the last few years. Fact. Now, the use of the word colonisation, that's what he's withdrawn.
Do you think that's offensive?
I think it's probably, in the dictionary definition, correct, but perhaps people aren't quite ready for it.
I mean, it has historical overtones, doesn't it?
It does.
In his apology, Sir Jim, who founded the Ineos Chemicals Group, said, "I'm sorry that my choice of language has offended some people in the UK and Europe and caused concern. But it's important to raise the issue of controlled and well-managed immigration that supports economic growth. The Manchester United co-owner is one of Britain's richest men, with a net worth of £17 billion. In 2020, he moved his primary residence to the tax haven of Monaco." Sir Keir Starmer's spokesman said it was right that Sir Jim had apologised for his offensive and wrong comments. Other cabinet ministers joined in the backlash.
What Jim Ratcliffe said was unacceptable. It was disgusting, frankly.
The Prime Minister's right. A lot of people would have found that language offensive, wrong.
The Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, said Sir Jim's comments were inaccurate, insulting and inflammatory. There was also condemnation from the world of football. The Football Association said it was looking into the comments. Sir Jim's own club, Manchester United, said it prides itself on being inclusive and welcoming, with a diverse group of players and staff and a global community of supporters. And on the streets of Manchester...
I'm an immigrant myself. I've been here for over 20 years, and I think everyone has a part in the community.
I think he should live in the UK and pay his taxes. End of. Otherwise, he should have his knighthood stripped off him.
Manchester is built on immigrants, right? From the Irish to, we've had everyone. So it seems a really weird thing to say.
Sir Jim remains defiant, but critics claim his outburst was an own goal.
Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, joins us. We're going to get your thoughts in a moment. But first of all, Rod, should he have his knighthood stripped from him? I thought you might say that.
Well, I think he probably shouldn't have got a knighthood in the first place.
Oh.
I mean, I don't agree with the way we bung honours to people who are very rich. I don't think... I think that's an abuse of the honour system. But you mustn't penalise people like this for simply saying what they believe. And the FA, it would be absolutely wrong of the FA saying it's investigating what he's been saying. I mean, they're ham-fisted enough when it comes to adjudicating on football issues. What they're going to be like on political issues, I don't know. It's an overreaction. He's been pilloried for 24 hours. Let it be,
You say that people shouldn't be penalised for saying what they believe, but what if what they believe is so heinous? It's racist, it's antagonistic, it's encouraging incitement to hatred. I'm not saying that's exactly the description of what he did. But if someone is guilty of that, should they just be able to say what they believe?
If he's inciting racial hatred, if he's breaking the law, in other words, then yes, of course they should be held to account. But we've had many comments from footballers aren't necessarily always at the top of the intellectual tree, and nor are many people in the game itself. They're not always the creme de la creme.
I think that's really insulting to football. There's no reason why they should be any less intelligent.
Hang on a minute.
Hang on.
They've got better as more foreign players have come in because. It's not a stigma abroad to play football if you're from the educated middle class. It's a class thing. It's a class thing a lot of the time. But people have said many things over the years which are politically stupid, egregious, sexist, probably racist. This is so minor by comparison that it would be an obscenity, I think, if the FA did anything about him. Well, it doesn't mean I like him. It doesn't mean I agree with him.
Just to point out that a football anti-racism leader, Piara Power, he said that Sir Jim Ratcliffe was using his platform to escalate hate.
Oh, for goodness sake.
I think that is an overreaction. I don't think he was setting out to escalate hate. I think the mistake he made was he got his facts wrong when he made his so-called argument, which wasn't an argument because it was totally incorrect. And I think if you are going to make arguments about there being too much migration, you should know what the population was in 2020, what it is now, and not cite a figure from 20 years before, which he did. He also got his facts wrong about benefits, and he also didn't mention the fact that a high proportion of those benefits go to working people, whether they're migrants or not migrants, and we have a whole economic system based on that. He also didn't talk about the fact that many of the migrants who have come over, even in the Boris wave, came to do care work, for example, that Brits refused to do. So it's a complex picture. But as far as I'm concerned, it's fine to have those discussions. We absolutely should be having those discussions. And if you don't have those discussions, that's exactly why you end up with reform.
Exactly.
But the big mistake he made was when he used, one assumes clumsily, a word like colonise, which is totally inaccurate and, yes, offensive. He should then have said, I'm sorry, I should not have used that word. Not, I'm sorry, I used a word that offended people. I'm sorry if you were offended, because that is not an apology. And that, to me, was a pig-headed approach. That was his big error of judgment.
Should we take a look at the Star and the Metro? They're leading with this story, which is obviously Sky original journalism, because he was speaking to us. So the Star headline there, ban United, Ratcliffe sorry, but FA could bar him from ground. And the Metro, just bring that up, Big Jim's own goal to continue the footballing metaphor
yes,
there.
Very good, yeah.
We started it earlier,
we
didn't
did,
we?
yes.
John, few things uniting the government at the moment, but this certainly did, didn't it?
Yes, I mean, it's a respite for the Prime Minister after a dreadful week and dreadful few weeks. Jim Ratcliffe probably is not the most popular businessman in terms for the Labour Party for a number of reasons. One, he was a Brexiteer. Two, Ineos is controversial in some ways because of fracking. Thirdly, politicians like Rachel Reeves, and I think she mentioned it today, are furious with him for shutting a plant in Scotland at Grangemouth. And he does have a reputation for closing businesses. He's upset a lot of people, making a lot of people redundant at Manchester United as well. And also, on the point about the definition, which Nigel Farage was quizzed on by our colleague Matt Barbette, I mean, what point about colonisation is that it's claimed that it basically means taking a country or by force, an invasion.
No, not necessarily.
Well, that's what some claim. The point about the reason it sounds like the language of reform is because Suella Braverman, when she was Home Secretary, I remember when she talked about an invasion of immigrants in the House of Commons, absolute uproar. And, of course, she's just joined Reform UK.
Should we read the actual definition? Send settlers to a place and establish political control.
Establish political control. And that's what I think Farage
or
was
forcibly take control.
Or forcibly.
And claim terrorism.
No, but
that's what I said.
But hang on, that was all forcibly. So it could also mean move to a country and take political control through perfectly democratic processes.
Well, that very clearly hasn't happened.
No.
Well, hang on. Where I think
it was the incorrect use of the word.
My guess is that what Farage was meaning was that some of our city councils are now run by either the children of immigrants or immigrants themselves. That's my guess.
Well, it's not what he said. We can guess. He might have been thinking about little green men on Mars. We don't know. But the fact is, what he said was that it was an accurate use of the word, and he was wrong.
Yes, he was wrong. Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's been another Downing Street departure. This time, it's the UK's most senior civil servant, the Cabinet Secretary, Sir Chris Walmald. He's been widely rumoured to be on his way out as the Prime Minister attempts to reset his premiership in the wake of controversies over the appointments of Lord Mandelson and Matthew Doyle, despite their links to sex offenders. John, why did he really go?
Well, I think he'd lost the confidence of the Prime Minister, whether rightly or wrongly. He'd only been in the job a year, and, of course, the Prime Minister he's becoming a serial sacker of people he's only just appointed fairly recently. And, of course, he will now be looking for his third Cabinet Secretary. I think it's his fifth Director of Communications, third Chief of Staff. So the knives have been out for Chris Walmald for some time now. A lot of briefing against him by ministers or people inside Number 10. And I have to say, the departure was pretty cold, pretty brutal. He's been kicked out today. It's suggested he actually left last night. He's got a fat payoff, probably 250,000, £250,000 or so. But there was no words of warm words for the PM in Chris Warmold's statements, although the PM did say he was grateful for his service. Of course, the Prime Minister has, some might say, dithered in who to appoint, because instead of just appointing a successor, he has appointed 3 on an interim basis. They are Catherine Liddle, Permanent Secretary at the Cabinet Office, Dame Antonia Romeo at the Home Office, and James Bowler at the Treasury. Now, we all thought that Antonia Romeo, who was a candidate last time, was going to get the job. She is a colourful and controversial character. Colourful, she loves the party lifestyle. Apparently, when she was in New York as a diplomat, she went to parties with Joanna Lumley, Calvin Klein, top models, showbiz people and so on. But she was accused of questionable expenses claims over things like...
she's on... Oh, I thought she was on the front page of the Guardian. The story is there. I thought she was pictured.
She was on one of them.
Claiming for school fees for her children, flights to go to a BAFTAs awards and so on. Now, and there was bullying allegations as well. There was an investigation by the Cabinet Office. She was cleared, no case to answer. Her defenders, who include Dave Penman, who's the boss of the Civil Service Union for the High Flyers, the First Division Association, said she was the victim of misogyny.
Let's also have a look at the Eye.
Feel exhausted after all.
I know. Set out the case quite clearly there. The headline in the Eye, Cull at number 10, exactly right, as Starmer tries to relaunch his leadership. And she is pictured on the front page of the Eye. We got the paper wrong, but the picture is definitely there. Christina, in terms of this story, do you think that members of the public are going to be interested in the shenanigans and goings-on of who's leaving?
Absolutely couldn't care less. I doubt very much it. I mean, I very much doubt that most people even know that... I mean, they might just know that Morgan McSweeney has gone. I very much doubt that most people would have followed the rest of it. And all of this kind of changing deck chairs on the Titanic, it's just not for most people. It's just neither here nor there, really. And it looks a bit desperate and also expensive, 250 grand. I mean, I'd be very happily fired from anything if I got paid 250 grand.
It's one of those stories that an old newspaper editor of mine used to call one for the aficionados.
Yeah, exactly. I think this has been a week for the aficionados, actually. But I think, you know, the big question... I don't know, I can hardly bear to raise it. You know, is he going to stay? He's here for now. He's here for now. He can move the chess players, you know, as much as he likes. I think the big question will be, and I don't imagine Labour's going to win the by-election, the Gorton and Denton by-election, but I think the big question will be what happens after May, and then we can have these discussions all over again. It'd be nice if he didn't fire anyone for maybe a day or so. Just give us all a break.
Rod, is he showing his ruthless side, though, do you think, in terms of how he's got rid of Sir Chris Warmold?
I think he's ruthless towards people who can't fight back. And if I was given a 250,000 quid payoff, I wouldn't fight back either. I think if it resonates at all with anybody who might be watching this or might be reading the papers tomorrow, it probably resonates in favour. I don't think there's a great affection within the heart of the British people for very senior civil servants. You know, I don't think they're people we cherish, perhaps as much as they think they should be cherished.
Spoken like a non-civil servant.
Spoken like a non-civil servant.
He might get a peerage, of course.
Ah, interesting.
Well, he'll have a lovely pension, and that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, he's already Sir Chris, isn't he?
Yes, but...
so they'll elevate him to the...
Those top Sir Humphreys often end up in the House of Lords.
They do, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, last night, we brought you the story of the Ukrainian skeleton racer at risk of being banned from competing in the Winter Games. Well, today, Vladislav Hereskovich was indeed prevented from competing for wearing a helmet depicting Ukrainian athletes killed since Russia's invasion of his country.
To be honest, some athletes was talking to me about my helmet, and from my perspective, from my discussions, I didn't saw that athletes from skeleton sport who was participating with me in the venues was against this helmet in any way. So it wasn't, they wasn't feeling that this helmet overshadowing them. They think it's beautiful tribute and it should be allowed. But I don't think it was the right decision in the first place to address and to not allow us to use this helmet. During last days, I think I just proved this point for myself.
Rod, did the IC make the right decision in your estimation?
Yes, it did. Keep politics out of sport completely. And it's very sad, and it's sad for Ukraine, but the real business about Ukraine should be done by the politicians in this country and Europe, and giving a bit more support to Zelensky. But sport has got itself into terrible trouble before with involving itself with politics and making judicial judgments against one country or another. And it should accept that politics is nothing to do with it, and that the sportsmen who are representing their countries are representing their fellow people, not the government of those countries. It's really important.
A difficult decision, though, for the IOC, and the President, Kirsty Coventry, spoke quite emotionally before. Let's take a look.
Yeah, she probably shouldn't.
Let's take a look.
I really wanted to see him race today. It's been an emotional morning. So, yeah, we have these rules in place to try and be fair, and also to try and allow for us to do both things, right? To allow for athletes to express themselves, but also to allow for athletes to be safe.
Can you understand why she's so emotional? I mean, they made the decision.
Yes. I mean, I think it might serve her to grip her emotions a bit more when she's on TV. But at the same time, I do understand. I felt, I mean, look, imagine your friends are dying. Your friends are dying for the democracy of your country, and most of the world isn't even noticing. So I completely understand that when you are, on the rare occasion you get near a global stage, you want to catch people's attention and point this out and pay tribute to your fellow countrymen who are dying. On the other hand, yes, I don't think politics should be in sport. I mean, it's hard to see this as politics because it seems so much, for most of it, is so much an issue of, it's not really a political thing about if you invade another country, it doesn't really feel political. It's like it is so obviously breaking international law and wrong. But anyway, I think she did do the right thing. I feel so sorry for him because he would have trained for years to do this thing. He's lost his moment, his ability to compete. It's sad for Ukraine that for one chance for it to be a good news story, which it won't, now won't happen because obviously this guy's not going to win anything, and he's got the tragedy of his country. So I think it's just all around a big shame.
Although he is going to be honoured, we read, by Volodymyr Zelensky when he returns, and there could be an appeal tomorrow. So watch this space. Now, should there be a ban on young children using social media? Stay with us for more on that after the break.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra al-Baghir has this report. And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
You are watching The Wrap. Now, keeping children safe in the digital world requires vigilance, but it's impossible to be there at every hour of the day. As the government mulls a social media ban for under-16s, our political editor, Beth Rigby, has been taking an in-depth look at whether or not it's a good idea.
Teenagers, smartphones and social media. How we keep our kids safe online has become the question of our time, and one that politicians are now trying to answer.
Hi.
Liz Kendall coming to a school in London that's banned phones to find out what the students think. I don't know if you know Liz, but Liz is the Secretary of State that is going to look after all this, a politician that makes all the decisions around this. So I was not going to say very much, and I was going to leave it to you, Liz, to talk to the teenagers. Well, why don't you start off?
We're thinking at the minute about whether we should ban social media for under-16s. What do you think about all of that, honestly?
Social media is definitely not saving time. Social media is definitely a waste of time. So if we were to find some sort of restriction for it, then it would be very helpful.
You're just constantly scrolling and you have a lot of dopamine by just scrolling all the time. Your brain gets used to that, and then you can only pay attention, like, you know, these 6-second intervals.
Do you feel you are still able to see inappropriate things? Because there is legislation that's supposed to stop illegal content for adults, for everybody, and harmful content for children. But there's also the view that this stuff is still getting through.
I've seen a bunch of transphobic and homophobic things online.
OK.
Well, I've seen some racist comments or racist videos featuring cyberbullying.
Would anyone not like a ban?
I think to ban it, it would take away, like, a big part of, like, young people's lives, because it's a big way which people do communicate.
And while this group of 12 to 15-year-olds had different views on social media, where they were in agreement was that a ban wouldn't work. Can I ask as well, you all understand technology much more than your parents. Could you find a way around a ban?
You can use VPNs to say that you're in a different country. My cousin, she lives in Australia. They've got the ban, and already, like, all of her friends, they've already found a way around it.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Really appreciate it.
Ever since Australia banned under-16s from using social media last December, the government have been under pressure to act. Ministers have now launched a 3-month consultation looking at how we might better protect kids online. They are looking at a ban for under-16s on social media, putting age limits on inappropriate content and restricting addictive features that lead to doom scrolling. Pressure is coming not just from parents, but from MPs in the Labour Party too, who are demanding the PM takes meaningful action to keep kids safe and deliver real change for millions of families across the country. Beth Rigby, Sky News.
So we've seen the example of a social media ban for under-16s in Australia. Is that you, Rod?
It is me.
Are we going to have to ban you after your first appearance? I mean, We're talking about social media and how it interrupts our life.
It's my taxi. Do you want me to go?
Not yet, not yet. Have you put it on silent?
It's on silent. That's the trouble.
But this is the thing, that it's in our everyday lives. We constantly rely on our phones. They're in our hands 24/7 as adults. And then we're trying to tell teenagers that put the phone down.
Yes. This is a difficult one because, obviously, as you say, and these are practically our brains now, and we carry them around all the time, and most of us are semi-hooked on it. And it's not like, you know, it's not like heroin. It's not something you can choose to just give up because you need it to function. You need it for banking. You need it to pay for stuff. You need it, you know, we all need our phones. And if you don't have access to the internet, actually you get quite quickly kind of cut off from society and your ability to function. But I do think that the effects, who knows the exact contributing factors for why so many children are experiencing anxiety and ADHD and all the rest of it, but it seems very likely that social media is playing a significant part in that. And fragmented concentration and focus is not going to help children or anyone as we face the big challenges of the future, AI being one of the biggest, and how people are going to adapt to the world of employment in the light of the fact that nobody knows which jobs are going to survive, which are going to be destroyed. You can make some guesses, but we don't absolutely know. So although the Australia ban is a very imperfect solution, and yes, you do hit a wall at 16, and then people will have to, you know, then learn how to adapt to social media and smartphones. And, of course, there are VPNs and there are always ways around it. I think just as a kind of cultural shift away from the 24-hour plug-in or 24/7 plug-in to social media, I think it could help shift the dial a bit, and even that would be helpful. So I think on balance, I support it.
Ban, so you think, Rod, that a ban is necessary?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think for two reasons. One, the reason which we talk about a lot, which is the dangers which social media poses to the kids in terms of bullying, in terms of pornography, in terms of violence, and bullying from their own friends, you know, on social media, but also the lack of concentration. I mean, you talk to someone like Catherine Burble-Singh, headmistress of the Michaela Academy. She told me not so long ago that very, very straightforward, the kids who get the best results don't have mobile phones, or at least they have the bricks so that they can ring their mum and dad, but none of the social media. Now, that may be a correlation rather than causation, but there's no question that the work done by Jonathan Haidt, people like that, that it's incredibly injurious. And we should cut down as well.
Yeah.
You know, we should cut down as well.
That's the thing, because we're not setting any examples.
Well, no, and you know, I sometimes feel it myself. You know, I've got books to read and stuff to do, and I think, oh, and I'll have a look at Facebook, you know, which is a boomer's kind of addiction, isn't it? But,
not mine. I'm a boomer, but I'm not keen on Facebook.
But that's what we do, and so we could set an example. But no, I think a ban is absolutely necessary.
I wish you'd say those words to my 18-year-old son, who has A-levels coming up.
Well, hang on. My daughter's 20. And she is doing this all the time, but wishes she wasn't. And she does say, you know, I wish I hadn't done this.
But that's what an addiction is.
It's what an addiction is, yeah, that's right.
Well, let's see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, shall we? Well, we start with the Star. Their headline is Ban United, with the newspaper reporting that Sir Jim Ratcliffe could still face an FA ban, despite now apologising for his comments on migration in that interview with Sky News. Big Jim's own goal is the Metro's take, with Manchester United fans said to be insulted, appalled and outraged with Sir Jim's remarks. Elsewhere, the dismissal of Sir Chris Warmold from his role as the UK's most senior civil servant is on the front of The Guardian. The Eye claims Sir Keir Starmer is trying to relaunch his leadership, with Dame Antonia Romeo, who is tipped into step as Cabinet Secretary. The Telegraph says Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham have called for more tax support for pubs in a fresh challenge to the Prime Minister's authority. Meanwhile, the government is losing its war on illegal drugs, reports The Express, with Labour accused of not having the backbone to stand up to crime gangs. The Mail goes with the government's long-awaited trans guidance for schools. A one-word headline on the front of the Mirror, unmasked, as a judge rules that the killer of 12-year-old Leo Ross can be named. And the Financial Times reports on the £9.9 billion takeover of British asset manager Schroders by American rival Nuveen. Let's start with the Telegraph and with a certain President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, and the case that he's bringing against the BBC is going to go ahead. Donald Trump's $10 billion lawsuit against the BBC will go ahead next year, Rod.
Yeah, might well win it as well. I mean, it's impossible in America to separate the judiciary from the political system anymore. On both sides, you know, on the sides of the Democrats who pursued Trump for... This is why he's doing it, because he was pursued by various allegations, some of which were true, many of which were fabricated. And Trump is now doing the same to his enemies. It's a terrible way for a society to go. There is no question that the BBC loused up appallingly over this particular programme and over a number of programmes. You can hear the contempt in the voice when the word Trump is mentioned in the news bulletins. You could see on election day when Trump was elected, they didn't look happy, you know, and contrast it with when Barack Obama, who was the last American president who could actually speak in proper sentences and with a degree of panache. Very, very different indeed. The BBC has to watch out, because I don't think that the government will allow the taxpayer to bail them out if this is. And so, as you've mentioned before, Christina, it could be existential.
Yeah, I think that would be tragic. I really do think that would be tragic. I think it is, of course, it's a flawed institution, but at least it has an aim to be objective. I mean, of course, it doesn't manage it a lot of the time, but most of our media doesn't have that aim. You know, it is owned by people who have agendas. And I think, quite apart from the fact that our hard power in the world is diminishing all the time, the BBC has been one of the key, if not our key soft power globally, has been the BBC. And to lose that would be a tragedy, I think.
But we are heading towards it one way or another, I think, because of the way the market is.
I think that is a bit defeatist. I think, you know, that, and it's a political decision. I think if everybody says, oh, well, it won't survive, we've got to have... I mean, maybe it has to be a subscription model, who knows? But I think we should, as a nation, have a commitment to continuing the BBC in some form or another. I think the idea of having a broadcaster that is neutral in its aim, that provides fact-based journalism globally, is really, really important to who we are as a country. And if we say, OK, we can lose that, I think once we have lost it, we won't realise what we've lost. If we look at the US and the terrible state of its media and what's just happened to the Washington Post, for example, you know, they are decimating. The tech bros have stolen the media, and then Bezos buys the Washington Post and destroys it, basically.
Just move on, must move on because of time, but just very quickly, as you were a previous employee of the BBC, do you agree with Christina that it must survive in some form?
I think it'll survive as a subscription issue. And, you know, the counter-argument to that is you look at the way that some of the time the war was reported from Israel, and some of the time the reporting on Brexit, post-Brexit, they were pretty good in the lead-up to Brexit, I thought. They're losing touch with the people who pay for the licence fee.
Yeah, okay.
Let's move to the Eye.
Some of the people who pay the licence fee. Obviously, some people who pay the licence fee share those views, but you're right that they should be...
Christina, take us into this story. Yes. Page 8 of the Eye. Nurses and ambulance staff could strike over, in quotes, insulting 3.3% pay rise.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Don't blame them, given the fact that the doctors were after 38%.
Well, exactly. I mean, it seems that... I mean, the thing is that what With Streeting is saying here is that the predicted inflation for the period that will be covered, 2026 to 27, is 2.2%, and therefore, in real terms, this is a pay rise. But as you say, in relation to...
pay rise of 1%.
Yeah, but in relation to the resident doctors, it's nothing. But, you know, the trouble is that most of the increase in funding to the NHS has gone to staff pay.
Yeah.
And you know, a big whack of that went to the resident doctors, who then instantly went on strike again and have now balloted for yet more strikes. So it's a very difficult problem to solve.
This will be a big blow to West Streeting, wouldn't it?
Well, it's a big blow to West Streeting, but you can also see where the nursing staff are coming from, and the problem is that they will not get the kind of public sympathy which they would have had and probably deserve because of the appalling behaviour of the resident doctors demanding a 33% increase because that would have taken them back to the level they were on in 2006. If only we could do that.
Exactly,
you know.
exactly. I mean, the whole country hasn't gone back to 2007.
Indeed.
Rod and Christina, thank you both. Coming up next, we'll take a look at more stories in tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter. Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Time now to take a closer look at what's making tomorrow's newspapers. Christina and Rod still with me. In this section, we're going to have a look at the Times, an article on page 2 of the Times. Good news culture proves terrible for the taxpayer. That's reeling you in, isn't it? What's this story about?
I didn't know what this was about. I've read it 3 times now. I think I know what it's about, which is that basically they've inculcated a kind of culture at the National Savings and Investment which says don't complain about anything, which I think is probably not a good idea. So it means that it's what they used to call in the 20s and 30s boosterism, that you just emphasise a good boosterism, which you just emphasise the good news all the time, and that meant that they failed to recognise that things were going horribly wrong all over the place. So good, well done for stopping it.
Well, they didn't listen to staff's concerns.
Yeah.
because they were too busy encouraging them to be positive.
Well, it sounds a bit like Trump's government, doesn't it? Everybody, nobody daring to stand up to the boss, which, as we know, is not a good way to run anything. For example, to fly a plane or operate in an operating theatre or anything. If you don't stand up to people when they are making mistakes, then it can have catastrophic consequences. And in this case, the catastrophic consequences seem to be for the taxpayer, who has forked out $43 million on consultants, which clearly is not a good... Well, I don't feel it's particularly good use of my taxes. Of course, it depends what the consultants did, but I can't imagine it was. And also, there seems to have been an enormous botched $3 billion digital makeover. I don't understand why public services, why digital systems in public services, NHS, etc., are always such a disaster. Every single time. They quadruple in expense, they don't work. I've got an app on my phone for the NHS. There are about 3 different things, and each time I have to book an appointment or anything else, I have to log into something different. Why can't they have one app? I don't know. It's some black hole that our taxes just go into. So I think, if we have to bring a bad news culture back, let's do it.
And I remember 1997, 1998, a number of reports came out which said that consultants, when brought into a company, made things worse invariably.
Yeah,
and
sure
that's been my experience with the BBC.
Well, we had them at the Independent. They didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
They came in and they tried to tell us and they knew nothing about running a newspaper.
It's my next job. I'm going to be a consultant. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let us move on to the Eye, and this story regarding, we were talking about this before, the children's online use, and this is saying that screen time is limiting our children's vocabulary.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This was a side of the argument in favour of banning mobile phones, which really bothers me, which is the lack of concentration and the shortage of attention span and the failure to pick up new words in a way that you would otherwise. And it's true that we moaned about this with television, and it had an effect, television, but it's even worse with this swiping, where you spend 2 seconds on average on one particular paragraph.
I've seen a young child go up to a television and try.
Yes, that's terrifying, isn't it?
I honestly think it is one of the tragedies of our time. I think that the fact that smartphones, of course the internet has brought us many good things, but I think the smartphone is the curse of modern life.
I think so.
And I think it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
Very quickly, because this story is very funny. This also in the Eye. Sausages and bacon off the menu at Peppa Pig show. Rob.
Yes, it's wonderful, isn't it? So there's a restaurant at the Peppa Pig in the on-site cafe for this show, and they've decided when Peppa Pig comes to town not to have sausages and bacon on the menu, which is wonderful. The flaw in the whole thing, though, is they're going to give them vegan ham, which is just awful.
You can't serve pork around Peppa Pig.
You can't serve pork around Peppa Pig.
Rod and Christina, thank you so much for taking us through
your pleasure.
Papers. Coming up, how Brentford bounce back against the leaders Arsenal, who dropped vital points in the Premier League title race.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories,
but with more lively debate,
more in-depth commentary,
and more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, what will you say next to Benjamin Netanyahu? In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I'm Martha Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent. I've interviewed some of America's most recognisable politicians.
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting.
Mr. Walker, you're anti-abortion, but 2 women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir?
Connor, what did you say to the President? What did you say?
We had a great meeting. He was a great man.
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents, based in Washington, D.C.
David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here.
Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism? I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
The anger too, and the division.
Where are you from? From Sky News, UK.
Yeah, back up.
Mr. Navarro,
I'm allowed to ask questions, aren't I?
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr. Musk. Has your ego and ignorance, sir, cost Ukrainian lives?
David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody?
Free wherever you get your news.
What words do you have for Harry Dunn's family today?
Have a nice day.
Do you fear a fourth indictment?
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Time now to get all the very latest sports news with Mike.
There's a reason why I've got a Premiership now.
There was a lot of noise around Alan possibly going to Manchester United and then Newcastle.
If you're asking me would I like Alan Shearer here, of course, who wouldn't like Alan Shearer?
Doesn't bother me at all, that's all it is, talk.
There are only two clubs that interested Alan.
I spoke to Sir Alex Ferguson. The temptation to go to Man United was huge.
You name your price, you've got to be prepared to stick to it.
How much I think? Because that was a world record.
It's £15 million, making it virtually impossible for me to leave.
I think there was an inevitability that he would move at some stage.
Shout for United!
I will, lads!
We're breaking records. We're giving people hope again.
Be like 725 from his name and number.
I just had to come back home. It was my dream to play for Newcastle and score goals at the Gallagher.
A lot of people probably looked at us and thought we probably needed a couple of centre-halves. Not Keegan.
After all, I'm only a sheet metal worker's son from Newcastle.
If I had to make the same decision again, it would be signed for Newcastle all day long.
Blackburn Rovers are finally back in the big time. Jack Walker's millions and the managerial expertise of Kenny Dalglish are proving a potent combination at Ewood Park these days.
I knew what was happening up there at Blackburn. They were continually spending money. We was building to be successful. Jack Walker just had one idea, which was, this is my hometown club. I'm not interested in too much on the commercial side. I just want them to be a success.
Shearer, he scored on his debut! Alan Shearer, Britain's most expensive footballer, starts to repay the fee with that cracking volley.
Made it hard for myself, haven't I? People are going to expect great things of me now. Being the most expensive footballer in the Premier League. How important was it for you within your own mind to get off to a good start and start banging in a few goals?
Blackburn Rovers and Southampton Football Club have put that price tag on me. People keep saying to me I'm the most expensive. All right, I am, but I've got nothing to do with that price tag. I can only go out and play to the best of my ability, and if clubs want to pay that amount of money for me, then so be it.
It was Kenny and Ray, obviously, who had decided that they would like to buy him. Ray had him with the England under-21s. He knew what talent was there, and it was at their instigation, really.
The atmosphere completely changed. We'd started signing more expensive players, and it were just little old Blackburn that were doing it. As the weeks went on, more and more arrived. We were getting the most expensive man in football, and Jack Walker brought him to us.
What an effort and what a goal from Alan Shearer! Oh, what a story!
He was sort of the old-fashioned centre-forward.
Let's take a look at the weather for you now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, the next few days will bring some wintry hazards, but Saturday looks mainly dry with widespread sunshine. At last! Northern parts will have a mostly dry and frosty start tomorrow. Elsewhere, there'll be showers or longer spells of rain, with some hill snow perhaps falling to lower levels over north-east England. Expect icy stretches. England and Wales will see further outbreaks of rain, sleet and hill snow during the morning, but Channel counties look drier and brighter. Meanwhile, the wintry mix over Ireland will become increasingly confined to the south-east.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
That was The Wrap. Thanks for watching. All the top stories coming up right here on Sky News for you.